Getting into it. Today's topic, I'm bringing everybody here today, is definitely of grave concern. U.S. military is prepping for a coronavirus pandemic. This goes back to the 7th. This is about a week ago. That means that the coordination and planning probably began a week or 2 weeks before that, giving it to you real like that. This is, by the time this was decided to be released to the public, it was after basically the military already had their shit together. They already decided what they were going to do on this. And here in a few moments, I will share the NORTHCOM directive on this, which is what really needs to be looked at. This is from the Military Times. Of course, headline, U.S. military prepping for pandemic, coronavirus pandemic. And the key thing to look at actually is the U.S. Northern Command, and specifically that the Navy and Marine Corps have been given service-wide orders being issued to them this week. That was last week. So, give you my analysis of that real quick. By the time this was being released to enlist the bottom of the totem pole enlisted ranks, this was already being discussed for several weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, in Washington and in the headquarters offices of all the respective military bases. Base generals were being briefed on this likely around the same time that the highest brass in Washington were. It's an executive order. There's an executive order. Shout out to Mike at Evolution Energy Arts. He called it. This right here is your proof that one Donald J. Trump is complicit in said New World Order plan to impose martial law on us, truth be told, because this is, I'm promising you, it's going to be a mirror copy of this. This is what everybody really needs to be looking at. Now, this is 433 pages long. And this is the U.S. Northern Command headquarters. This is not classified or for official use only, for what it's worth. Actually, this is completely available to the public. I will include a link to this in the description box. Before I get too heavily into that, this is the Marine Corps order. And the Marine Corps order, signed effective on the 12th, that was yesterday, affects every Marine and sailor in uniform. This is service-wide, and I do specifically remember noting that as I looked through this, those of you who are veterans, you know, I'll use the haircut rule as an example. There's a Marine Corps or Army, Navy order on what the guidelines for getting a haircut is. Okay, and in the Marine Corps order would be every 2 weeks is standard operating procedure to receive a fresh haircut to be considered within the standards of uniform, right? There's flexibility in that. And using this rule as an example, this is one of those rules where the flexibility is given to the individual command unit or commander discretion to implement the policy as they see fit according to the nature of their particular unit. And 9 times out of 10, what each individual unit commander, a company commander, battalion commander, regiment commander will decide to do is actually make that rule more strict. The company, battalion, or regiment order would be to get a haircut every week, not every 2 weeks. Using that as my metaphor, I looked through this and I did not see any flexibility for unit commander discretion or deviation, which means that this is absolutely rigid and that this is meant to be followed absolutely to the T. That's troubling. And not only that, but that this is appearing to be not like what you would consider in the regular tempo of warfare, post-invasion, where you already have some knowledge or gnosis of what to expect in your AO or area of operation. Training for deployments to these regions and zones will be less reactive and more proactive. You'll have, in my instance, I joined the Marine Corps after the invasion of Iraq, by several years, by 2 years, I think, and so by the time I was entering the combat zone, yes, it was still very much a combat zone. Yes, there were still battles being had, and yes, it was still a very dangerous place to be. But it wasn't like what it was like to invade, be on that leading edge, and literally be the first ones rushing into the howling dark on the leading edge of the unknown. Marines who were about to invade Iraq probably had a month or less to prepare, and that's the point I'm making with this specific Marine Corps order. Is it's very reactive and not proactive. The Marines who are getting ready to respond to this event have inside of 2 weeks to 30 days and then deploy. And that's what I'm seeing in the language of this specific Marine Corps order. Now, when you begin to look at all this stuff in the beginning, and even people who are in the service don't even necessarily understand what a lot of that stuff up here means. This is who it's attached to and the dates that these things were either assigned or revised or published. And you'll see that some of these dates, YMD stands for year, month, date. Let me find one of them. Here we go. This specific reference K, and there's a table of contents, as it were, down here. HQMC, Headquarters Marine Corps. So this is coming from the Headquarters Marine Corps in the Navy shipyard in Washington, literally Washington, D.C. And you'll notice that we have a month and day, or rather month and year, but the actual date is scrambled. That's an encryption. All right, so this, whatever day this specific reference number was published or revised or amended is effectively classified, and we're not supposed to know that part. This is your terminal learning objectives. This is the basic gist of the message. It's not the actual meat and bones of the message. This is an order. Reference H is Office of the Secretary of Defense guidance, which contains overarching information on the novel coronavirus. So there are specific deviations being made to what is otherwise this plan here. And that's where the only flexibility and deviation is actually occurring. This is the General's Playbook. All right, this is the Commandant of the Marine Corps Joint Chiefs of Staff base commander playbook on how to, this is more or less guidelines, a guidebook on how from the top going down the orders are going to be issued. It has to basically follow this specific framework, more or less. This is where the expression no plan survives first contact with the enemy comes into play. You have a preparation for something like that already in place, which is what this is. And then as orders come down and trickle down, they start to look something like this. All right. The Marine Corps response to a pandemic outbreak focuses on 5 major areas. Okay. And this part right here is important so you understand what these acronyms mean. DSCA, co-op, FHP, DCP. All right, force health protection is FHP. Disease containment planning is DCP and or DCPR, which is the and readiness. Continuity of operations. This is your continuity of government protocols right here. This is where the fact that this is being listed in an ALMAR order means that layers above this specific order, there's plans for Congress to go sneak away to that hotel in Virginia and go right off to their bunker. POTUS is probably going to be underground when the lockdowns get declared. And I'm actually stating that for the record here on my channel, that the imminent threat that I'm going to have to, when who's calling me, I got to ignore this. Where was I at? But yes, the threat and imminent danger that we are going to have martial law declared. And I'm not saying it's going to be a sweeping declaration. I'm not saying every city all at once, but I do expect LA, San Diego, California, major cities in California, Washington, Oregon. You guys are probably going to be the first ones locking down, because you guys I've been following for a while. I've already been seeing that there were plans for FEMA activations and National Guard activations in your regions as soon as the coronavirus was coming into the news. New York City, yeah, I expect you guys to get locked down pretty quick here in the next coming weeks. Everywhere else, well, I am in the Tampa, St. Petersburg area. I'm going to be actually going out to the field after I post this specific segment and looking in a few areas where I know to expect that there's going to be an increase in military staging and activity if there is, in fact, a plan to deploy a lockdown, martial law, quarantine. All right, so these things right here were important. We covered those acronyms because you got to understand what that stuff is when you start to look down here. Now, some of the first provisions made in this order are about quarantining and the handling of Marine and naval personnel and civilians attached to the Marine Corps, should they happen to be arriving back from duty stations or wherever that are in China right now as they're coming back. That seems pretty clear-cut. Same stuff they're dealing with everyone else that is coming back from China. Looks pretty boring. You're probably done reading it at this point. Well, oh yeah, and read in here to see what you might expect if you happen to get quarantined. It'll probably be worse than that, actually. Marine will call ahead. I mean, this is all stuff I've seen before. Commanders. All right, here's where the commander guidance comes into play. Review, update, and validate existing disease containment plans and policies in order to implement procedures for response, isolation, quarantine, restriction of movement. And you'll see ROM is used as the acronym to describe that particular evolution. Community-based intervention. This is perhaps more important. This is a soft way of saying martial law. Excuse me as I look for co-op plans, including continuity of essential services. This is them saying we're going to try and keep the government running as long as possible, and hopefully as well utilities. We got to try and keep our garbage getting picked up, our sewage running, our water coming out of the tap, and our lights turning on. Expect all of the bottom mentioned things to be gone before the first mentioned thing to be gone. Got it? All right. And this is more or less getting into command and signal. Okay. Applies to the total force. And it is effective immediately. That means that as soon as this was issued, if this was issued in the middle of the night, a formation was called, and Marines were pulled out of bed in the middle of the night, and formation was called to brief Marines on this, and that's how serious this is. All right, this is not a joke. This is a big deal. Marines right now are being thrown through the door to do their MOP training, to do their NBC training. I wouldn't put it past every Marine Corps unit by tomorrow, by Friday, having on the battalion level, service wide, at least a classroom briefing on, well, everything from people coming back from China to we're taking over Walmart parking lots and we're dealing with the infected in situations like this. These are images from the Spanish flu outbreak. Get this picture real quick. See about really blowing that up. Get out of here. That'll never happen here, right? Sure. That'll never happen again. Sure. I don't know. That's not gonna happen here. It's 2020, man. You know, that was like 100 years ago. I don't know. Because that's Wuhan. This is a quote-unquote hospital run by the Chinese People Liberation Army. Notice that there are no medical supplies. No one has an IV. No one, this one person really is giving supportive care to all. Well, looks like those beds don't have any patients yet. Let's take more looks and see here. I should have went on to Twitter and grabbed some of those. Yeah. But yeah, that's that. Another reason why, this is my coverage of, or my coronavirus update from 2 days ago, from the 11th. What this
people who had been in that area of China. And
yeah, it's Governor DeSantis. Like I was saying, he is taking the stance of Operation Security. He himself is a military veteran. He's a United States Army infantry platoon commander. And he's treating the whole state of Florida like we're members of the platoon. And then what we end up knowing is what we need to know, and he's going to decide what we need to know. They're not going to release to the public any numbers, officially or otherwise, what cases we have here in the state of Florida. I need to figure out how to get a hold of Dr. Cottrell, actually, because I need to talk to him and interview him on that. He knows quite a bit about that case that happened in Holiday and some of the things he was saying in that video update I was watching when he issued that, given the fact that was a just small child. That really alarmed me and really upset me. This here, I'm not going to cover too extensively, but let's see here. If you look in, probably be better if I use my arrow key there. There we go. Or not even for, okay, so here we go. Starting down here in item P is really where you, or item O actually, is where I'm going to start to look. And I'm going to actually do a whole segment on specifically this white paper, because it is 433 pages long. I need to really dive into this and look into this myself. But, you know, given my military knowledge and my understanding of military vernacular and jargon, kind of putting all this together, Here, item 0, unified command plan. That's Northcom, and that's Northcom operating domestically and running operations inside the United States. And that's absolutely everything that has to do with. Notice the publishing date for that is in 2008 during the Obama administration specifically. I think there's a good reason for that. And that immediately segues into pandemic influenza, clinical and public health guidelines for the military health system. And then where things start to really get worrisome, DoD strategy for homeland defense and civil support. That's talking about partnerships with local law enforcement agencies and the National Guard units. All of this is step by step, implementation by implementation, martial law, step by step, emergency essential DoD U.S. citizen civilian employees. I can bet that has provisions in it regarding deputizing city officials and public officials for certain duties. Security and Prosperity Partnership of North America. These things, military assistance to civil authorities and also military assistance for civil disturbances. Yeah, I'm going to need to cover this in depth in its own segment. After I go out and do my field work, I'm going to be looking, like I said, in a couple places where I just know deployment is going to happen in specifically what I'm going to call the St. Petersburg AO, or area of operation. If you're watching this, I'm going to be putting this on my Facebook page, my personal page, so that even my close friends who don't specifically watch me usually can get this message. This is very serious. If I were you, if you're getting this right now, the time to get food and water and as much of it as possible is now. Expect to be needing to shelter in place here pretty quickly, because the government's going to make you. And let's hope that none of us dissidents are suddenly being renditioned in the middle of the night like what's going on in China right now. I'm actually starting to kind of worry about that too. That's it for this segment. I'm going out to the field. I'm going to go ahead and change over, and I will be posting more specifically on this right here. This is from the top. This is from the top. All right, like I said, this is the general's manual / handbook. May as well be spell book. All right, this is the general. We're going to call this the general's Wuhan plague spell book. All right, that's what this is. We're going to have more coverage of this here. Hopefully later on tonight. I've had some technical difficulties with my OBS software, unfortunately, which is why I had no content produced yesterday, and why it's been taking me all the way till 4 o'clock now to produce this. But we got the message out, and stay tuned. I'm going to have more on this, all right? See y'all later.